It comes as no surprise that the coronavirus pandemic has disproportionately impacted communities of color across the state of New York. The disparities were already there, but have been exacerbated and brought into the light by the pandemic. And as New York's demographics shift, those disparities will only get worse. Yet, it's become clear that the state is not allocating the resources necessary to address glaring needs in health, food insecurity, and housing for its growing 50-plus population of color. By analyzing social and economic issues from a culturally aware perspective, legislators can find effective answers to all New Yorkers' issues. The pandemic has made it clear that now is the time to change the way we design solutions to social and economic problems in our state. It's why the third chapter in the Disrupt Disparities series is the most urgent one yet. After years of sounding the alarm about the unmet needs among New York's most vulnerable citizens, we are now warning political leaders and the media about the irreversible consequences of failing to act swiftly to address these inequities. Today's presentation will analyze the reasons that led to the social and economic fallout from the present crisis, how we could have better responded, and what must be done now to address even wider disparities efficiently and avoid a repeat in the future. A panel of experts in the fields of research, social development, and cultural dynamics from New York's leading organizations put into clear perspective the complex situation the state is currently facing. New York, like other states and the nation, has struggled to contend with the unequal impacts of the coronavirus pandemic and yet to be seen long-term consequences. We must learn from the costly mistakes of the past to plan a successful path forward. That's why we appreciate your attention today and welcome you to Disrupt Disparities 3.0.
Good morning, everyone. Boy, the world has really changed radically since January when AARP New York and our collaborators on Disrupt Disparities Initiative released our last report. Last January, it seems like a million years ago. The pandemic and its impact on older New Yorkers of color has been appalling. In every facet of life, 50-plus communities and individuals of color have borne a huge brunt of COVID. We have seen it in health, in hunger, and in housing, and so much more. Today, we present Disrupt Racial and Ethnic Disparities 3.0. We bring our focus on these three areas, but get ready because as we all know so well, the suffering continues. So AARP, the NAACP, the Urban League, the Hispanic Federation, and the Asian American Federation will continue to fight these ills and others. I'm Beth Finkel, and I'm the AARP New York State Director. We're thrilled to be joined here today by the leading voices for New York's community of color, including Dougie Fresh, a living hip-hop legend, a humanitarian, and a Harlem resident. And later, during today's summit, we'll hear from a key member of the congressional leadership and another leading voice from our communities of color, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries of Brooklyn. Joining me at today's press conference are three AARP New York colleagues who will present the key findings and recommended solutions from our newest report. And I'm also very pleased to acknowledge our collaborators on this initiative who will be available to answer any questions in just a bit. They are the leaders of the four preeminent organizations for New Yorkers of color. Hazel Dukes, president of the NAACP New York State Conference. Barbara Rice, president and CEO of the New York Urban League. And Joanne Yu, executive director of Asian American Federation. And Frankie Miranda, president and CEO of the Hispanic Federation. Thank you all for your collaboration on this important work and for being here today. During the summit, immediately following this press conference, we will also be joined by a number of leading national AARP officials, including our Senior Vice President for Global Thought Leadership, Dr. Jean Axius, who will deliver the keynote, and my boss, Royal Andrews, who's VP at AARP for States and Communities. Then we're going to be joined for two panel discussions on the issues that are covered in this report. State Senators Roxanne Prasad and Brian Kavanaugh, and State Assembly members Ron Kim and Catalina Cruz. Healthcare Workers Union SEIU 1199 Executive Vice President Millie Silva, Hunger Solutions New York Director of Communications and Public Affairs Sherry Tomasky, Rodney Harrell, AARP's National Vice President for Family, Home, and Communities, and my New York colleague, Bill Ferris, our state legislative representative. So let's get right into this. To present our key findings in the health area, let me introduce AARP New York's Associate State Director for Multicultural Outreach, Reggie Nance.
Thank you, Beth, and good morning. You are more likely to be in danger of COVID-19 if you're in a nursing home with a high percentage of residents of color. Nursing homes with at least a quarter of Black or Hispanic residents have been twice as likely to be hit by COVID-19 than those with less than 5% of the Black and Latino residents. And this is happening as more people of color have moved to nursing homes while the rate of white nursing home residents moving to nursing homes has declined. And so far this year, more than 6,500 people have died in New York nursing homes since the onset of the pandemic. And community-based programs that provide support, adult daycare, and other services for beneficiaries and respite for their family caregivers were forced to shutter their doors as a result of social distancing requirements. These have all impacted older New Yorkers of color. And loss of insurance coverage has disproportionately affected communities of color, including Hispanic, Latino, immigrant, and low-income communities. This is part of the fallout from the economic collapse caused by the pandemic. Unemployment rates among Hispanic Latino workers reached nearly 19% in April, and among African-American workers, 17%. And in the Bronx, home to many New Yorkers of color, the unemployment rate nearly quadrupled from 5.2% in 2019 to nearly 25% this past July. Obviously, there's much to do, and we will get to that. But now we're going to turn to food insecurity and housing issues. And for that, I'd like to introduce my fellow AARP New York Associate State Director of Multicultural Outreach, the one and only Maggie Castro. Maggie.
Thanks, Reggie. Those numbers are really sobering. What we found with housing and hunger, it actually is just as sobering. So what we've learned is that about 25% of Black and Latino families who responded to a US Census Bureau survey reported not being able to pay their rent in May of 2020. That compares with 14% of white households. Statewide, half of all Black tenant households fall behind on their rent as of late May, early June 2020. So in terms of hunger, COVID-19 has significantly increased food insecurity. In New York City, 1.2 million people faced food insecurity pre-pandemic, but now that number has nearly doubled to 2.2 million, or roughly about 25% of the population. There's a definite racial divide. We found that 39% of Black families and 37% of Hispanic families are now struggling with food insecurity. Those numbers are much higher than the 25% of New York City's population at large. The program Get Food NYC has helped many homebound older residents who face increased health risks from the pandemic, but there are a number of concerns with the program, including that meals aren't nutritionally appropriate for the older people and culturally appropriate either. So SNAP, the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, can be a big help in eradicating food insecurity. New York State does have the second highest SNAP enrollment for people ages 60 plus in the US, but still, more than 330,000 eligible New Yorkers 60 plus are not enrolled in the program. There are barriers to enrollment, and the pandemic has thrown up barriers to recipients even getting the food that they need. The fact is, 77% of households nationally that included a SNAP-eligible adult, 50 and over, are single-person households. And many older single people, especially those in apartment buildings, have been understandably unwilling to leave their homes to grocery shop for fear of contracting the virus. So as Beth noted, we're about finding solutions to the healthcare, housing, and hunger problems that our report identifies. And to highlight those recommendations for legislation and policy aimed at leveling the playing field, I'd like to introduce my colleague, AARP New York Associate State Director for Advocacy, Kristen McManus, who I might add was also one of the authors of this report.
Thank you, Maggie. As you and Reggie and Beth have said, identifying these problems is really only half of the battle. What we need to do now is make sure that we're putting forward solutions to address these issues. And that's part of the reason why we put together the Disrupt Disparities 3.0 report. We want to provide a roadmap for our elected officials and policymakers to level the playing field for communities of color. So let's take a look at some of these recommendations. When it comes to healthcare, we are proposing an independent review of the state's handling of the coronavirus pandemic in nursing homes. And we've also thrown our weight behind legislation that would create a state long-term care task force where stakeholders can come together and promote models for improvement. And these two initiatives both have the same goals. We need to look at the conditions that led to the unfortunate loss of 6,500 long-term care residents in our state and come up with ways to mitigate that and prevent it from happening in the future. And one of the ways that we can do that is to help people stay at home for as long as possible. So we've also called for adequate and increased funding of home and community-based services to help keep people at home. These are services like transportation to and from doctor's appointments, home delivered meals, assistance with some daily activities, some light housekeeping. And this is also a way that we can support our family caregivers. It really helps to ease the burden and take some things off their plate. And as Reggie noted, we know that more people of color at increasing rates are entering into nursing homes. So anything that we can do to help them stay safely at home is a great way to keep them safe from this pandemic. We're also looking to battle food insecurity, and this isn't just about the home delivered meals that we've mentioned before, but enhancing enrollment in SNAP through things like education and outreach programs that are available in multiple languages. Or we can maximize opportunities for data matching so that people who are eligible for other benefits are aware that they can enroll in SNAP. We also want to make permanent a trial program that the state is running now that allows SNAP recipients to shop online for groceries that can be delivered to their home. So again, our goal is to make sure that we're keeping people safe in their homes. And part of keeping people safe in their homes is making sure that they have homes to stay in the first place. So we're also pushing for an eviction moratorium that will last for the full state of emergency. And in addition to that, a statewide law that's modeled on the very successful New York City's right to counsel law with expanded income eligibility. We also are calling for a housing access voucher program that will help New Yorkers who are unhoused or on the verge of losing their housing be able to stay in a home. There are plenty more recommendations in the report, but these are the ones that I thought were the most significant to point out to you today. And I'll turn it back over to you, Beth.
Thank you so much, Kristen, Maggie, and Reggie. Well, those are the facts, and those are our collective recommendations. And now we're going to hear from a man who understands that research and legislating is the only way to make life better for communities of color. He's raised money to stop gun violence. He's hosted an Instagram live party to honor healthcare and other essential workers early on in the pandemic. And he created the remix of his classic showstopper about washing your hands and staying safe. We are so thrilled to have him with us today because he's really a living hip hop legend. a musical trailblazer, and the man considered the greatest beatboxer of all time, a Grammy winner and a New Yorker, because he's going to lend his substantial voice, both literally and figuratively, to the cause. It's really my honor to introduce Mr. Dougie Fresh.
Thank you for inviting me and having me be a part of this. This is very important. This is a very important thing. You know, I want to really thank, you know, AARP for just even considering me to be a part of this. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Dougie, I know you've been a great advocate in the community. There's so much that you've done, reaching out in both Harlem, in New York, but really across the country. I think you are known as a great humanitarian. So when you hear about the concerns of COVID in the 60+ community and what we're concerned about, particularly around people who have lost their income, people who don't have enough food to put on the table, people who are concerned about losing their homes because they can't afford their rent or to keep up with their mortgages, and are worried about what happens when the moratoriums are over and they're going to have to pay those bills, their utility bills. I'm just wondering what you feel as a leader in the community and a friend and a neighbor, and I know a loved one of many older adults.
Well, that's a great question. And I guess the only way that I can answer that is honest. And my honest opinion on that, my honest feeling is that it doesn't make me feel good. I mean, as you know, our artists are going through a lot as well, because the artists are not able to be out there and entertain and, you know, and give the energy that they normally would give to the different communities all over. But in this particular case, you know, to see your loved ones or you see friends and family have these difficult times, you know, I feel the times, but I know that they feel the times. Some people feel the times even more. So what I tried to do was take my music and my songs and the different creative ways to express, telling people to wash your hands, stay 6 feet from each other, you know, wear your mask, and do it in a way that it would motivate them to really apply this, because I know that resolving this particular sickness, this COVID-19, is the only way that we'll get back to some form of normal. And I really think that, you know, we're living in a time where, you know, we have to be more concerned with each other than just ourselves. So it's about seeing what's going on, taking responsibility, and trying our best to apply some of these basic things to protect each other. And it doesn't make me feel good to see the conditions and people not being able to make money and go out there and support their families and stuff like that. And I just feel like we're in a very interesting time. I've never thought that I would be living in a time where I would see something like this. So my concept is if everybody does a little, nobody has to do a lot. And if we take these basic things and apply them, you know, and really, really apply them, I think that we can work our way out of this situation. But we have to support each other. So that's why I'm here now, you know, because I really appreciate, you know, what y'all are creating right here, and just everybody that's involved with AARP, and how, you know, how y'all have been so active in the communities for so long. You know what I mean? So it's a collective effort. That's really what I feel. It's not just one person, it's the collective that's going to make this particular thing work. I mean, because these times are very, very interesting, and the numbers are explaining what's going on, you know. Last thing I'd like to say about in this answer, if you don't mind, is that
Please.
Even as we're looking at the time of now, we're looking at Thanksgiving. When I look at Thanksgiving, I always say giving thanks, you know, to my mother, to my father, to the people that represent my family to the ones that I love, but at the same time, just doing something simple, like, you know, being more responsible and thinking about the family members that are coming over and taking that moment to, you know, maybe do a test or, you know, find out just to make sure that you are protecting the ones that you love, because, you know, just that one little thing that you thought, hey, I don't have to do that. And then, you know, you didn't know that this was going on with you, and now you're in the family circle and the whole family, you know, is dealing with the you know, the consequences of just that one little thing that you could have done, you know. So I just think we have to all be responsible. And once again, if we all do a little, nobody has to do a lot. That's my opinion.
You know, it's really interesting because when you use the word interesting times, I thought, whoa, that is an understatement. We are living in times that none of us had ever expected.
You're
So
absolutely right.
we appreciate your voice. We appreciate your creativity. We really appreciate your dedication to the community writ large. You are really an exemplar of being someone who cares about their fellow man and puts themselves out there and shows it in a real and honest and authentic way. So we can't thank you enough. I just hope you keep it up. Don't ever stop. Please keep going.
No stopping, no stopping.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.